Shh. And indeed, it is always an interesting time within the Business Morning segment when Ini begins to talk about the figures and how they all impact on the different sides of our life, the economy and all. Today, I should focus on the real estate sector. Had a conversation with the Minister for Housing and Urban Development, and he talks about the plans of government to ensure that the housing sector, the real estate sector is how do you, in his words now, is revived, so to speak. And you see actions being taken with the reconstitution of the Federal Housing Authority Board, and some of the people that came into that space are people that are into the real estate sector, real housing. And there's a friend that we know, a friend of the house, architect Nyaito, who's always talked about ensuring that the housing deficit in Nigeria is reduced to the barest minimum. So we see actions being taken, we see things being done, but as someone asked the question, when can the average Nigerian say, I own a home? How quickly can that be, where you say the cost of housing is attainable
especially
everybody?
In this time, so I think it was just yesterday, we're looking at the Guardian newspapers when it says that many Nigerians have put off
for food.
Yes, they put off their plans to own homes in favor of food, which is the reality, which is a rather grim reality that many people are contending with. But if you also ask a number of people, former Minister of Housing used to always say, well, he was Works and Housing, used to say that he doesn't really believe that there is a deficit because. And places like Abuja might help give fillip to that when you look at the number of estates that are being developed, in some instances have been fully developed, yet people do not live in them.
Why?
So the big question. So there's also been that connection, that question that needs to be asked, between the relationship between money that is being laundered and the real estate market. So I think that the real estate market really needs to come to the real market.
Yeah, indeed.
To the real market where the real Nigerians live, the real Nigerians who truly need housing, can afford housing within their reach. Because truly, if we're able to address, those kinds of concerns where people who are, who have a steady income, who have a regular income can say, oh, I can save towards a home, our mortgage system starts to really work, then we will see that many more of our youths will want to stay here. Imagine, there will be questions as to, how many youths will really want to, leave all that they have if they had a home, tied to their name.
That they have a...
Exactly. How many people will really, yes, a few people will still want to migrate. You cannot stop that. But the incentive to want to stay here will certainly be large. And I think that is something our governments really need to look into.
Marcus, some people say, well, on a lighter note, they'll tell you that Nigeria has the different definitions for practically everything. Mortgage is defined differently than what is obtained in other climes. But we're unique people and we do things uniquely. But I'm sure Aya is also wondering, when would we get to that point where the housing deficit, if it does exist, can be cut down to the barest minimum? You talk about houses and estates springing up, more and more springing up every day, and one begins to ask, who lives in all of these houses?
And lots of them,
and they say 70% of the houses in Abuja are empty, and the ones that are even occupied are some occupied illegally. So what do we do about this? Someone said, maybe we should put a tax on the empty houses, a kind of tax to force the landlords to rent out the houses or to sell them so that when someone's occupying it, your tax is much lower. And all of these are conversations that need to come. But let's see if Ayo he can weigh in on this one. Maybe Ayo already worked out his mortgage and has a proper definition of a mortgage in there.
Lagos Homes was there for a while. I mean,
well,
how is that
Lagos Homes
is it still a program that many Lagosians are subscribing to?
Yes, it is actually one of those things that a good number of people have subscribed to and are still subscribing to. As they say, terms and conditions apply. You know, one of the things that comes to mind as you were talking about this particular issue of housing is that the federal government does have some structures on ground for people to own homes. The Federal Mortgage Bank initiative is still there. And I am pretty sure that, you know, the only thing we need to do, as a number of people have said, is to test the laws, test the system, see whether or not it does work. If it doesn't work, and that's another conversation altogether. Why is it not working? If it's not working, let's, you know, abrogate it and set up something completely different. That's what this whole thing is about. One of the concerns that comes to my mind, Nyota and Malkwe, is that in the studies that the NBS released, talking about multidimensional poverty, one of the four major areas of poverty is accommodation, housing, where people live. You have seen areas in Lagos in particular, and in some other parts of the South, where the living condition of people is absolutely inhuman. And sometimes some people who go with their PSS, personal social responsibility, PSRs, personal social responsibilities, go there, give people money, move them from place to place and all of those things. You know, those issues are still there. Lagos State government came up with its own idea, and Lagos is the only one I know. I don't know if there are other states who are having these kinds of initiatives of getting their people into better homes. We talk about this in internally displaced persons as if we're doing them a favor. We have a responsibility to make sure that they live well. The place where they were living before wasn't good or strong enough to debar banditry and all of those insecurity that chased them out of home. And in the places that we call camps for internally displaced persons, how habitable are these places? I've never been to one. And from the pictures that I have seen around, I'm not sure any one of us want to find ourselves in that situation, and we can say God forbid for all we care until it hits home. So that's, you know, what would be my take. There are so many dimensions to this. I know real estate is highly capital intensive, but then don't forget that one of the responsibilities of government is to ensure the security and welfare of its citizens. I'm pretty sure that accommodation is a significant part of the welfare ambit of that responsibility. It's back to you guys.
Indeed, accommodation is one of those, in fact, is a major pillar in anybody's welfare, that the person has a roof. As they say, the three basic needs of man: food, shelter, and clothing. Shelter comes second. So, Malkwe, it ties into that story we saw yesterday about people abandoning shelter for food. Food is number one: food, shelter, and clothing. In fact, some would even say, let me eat first before I think of what to wear, and all that. But while all of this is happening, yes, I just talked about the fact that federal government has a role, is doing something. There are also structures that are in place. The Federal Mortgage Bank is there. It's been there for
I think it's a National Housing Fund.
There's a National Housing Fund. But the question is, how many in the private sector are actually contributing to the National Housing Fund? And those who have contributed, how many of them have gotten their houses? Someone talks about how he went in to get a house through the mortgage bank, and the process is scary enough. And then he finally gets the house. What he has to go through to ensure that his accounts are, reconciled is another matter. He had to go and source a facility to clear that once and for all, because they were having issues reconciling his account, his status at every point in time. So he just wanted it out of the way so that he can know that, okay, I'm owing the bank, and the bank's way of paying back a facility is it's clear for me to see, unlike the other side. So clarity is needed in all of these things. The different institutions that are doing one thing or the other, again, need to communicate to the Nigerian people and say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. At one time, I think under the Goodluck administration, there was mortgage refinancing. There was a package that came with mortgage refinancing. And how many people got that mortgage refinancing package? How many people did it benefit? What happened to that refinancing project? Is it dead? What are the details behind it? Again, information and communication to the people is needed. But do we need houses? Yes, we do.
We certainly do. I mean, people should be, be able to own their own homes. People should be able to be free of the worry of rent, especially as they grow older. So these are some of the things. But this is not what we're hoping to talk about. But, sometimes when we talk about bad money and how it, also enters the economy and the kind of places where it finds itself, part of the conversation which we'll be having, we heard just last week the Nigerian government, reopening its borders with Niger Republic and, lifting a slew of sanctions on Niger. It had earlier placed, don't forget, it wasn't just Nigeria, it was ECOWAS that had done this. But Nigeria just took its own step as a country to, follow the sanctions that ECOWAS had lifted. And that announcement was made last week. I mean, even as far as granting that public officials, could also travel. That's Nigerian government officials and their families could also travel within the West African sub-region, a situation that had not been. So we're looking at what the consequences of that is on our economy, considering the fact that for some time, there had been complaints, especially by residents, Nigerian residents and also Nigerian residents who live along the border, about this affecting business and the economies of those places. And we're speaking this morning with someone who should know, ACG, he's retired now, Assistant Controller General of Immigration, Segun Adegoke, joins us right now. He is currently the Special Advisor, Migration and Homeland Security to the Executive Governor of Oyo State, and he joins us via Zoom from Ibadan. It's good to have you with us, sir. Welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Yeah, the digital borders are not open yet.
And it does appear that we're having some challenges hearing him just about now, but we certainly will keep working on it and we'll let you know when we have been able to establish connections eventually. But Nyota, talking about this particular situation, I had a conversation with a former ambassador of Nigeria to the AU, to the African Union, Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo, and that was what we spoke about last week. What the implications of it were for democracy, whether she thinks that this kind of blanket lifting of the sanctions could have, a bad effect. I'm looking for another word now, but could discourage countries that have, maintained democracies in their countries to think that, democracies can be upturned without any consequences, especially from sister countries who have agreed to live by a certain set of rules and values. And her reaction was quite interesting. She said, yes, there could be implications, but that, what people need to remember, even those who uphold democracies within their countries, is that what citizens are actually looking for is good governance.
Yeah.
What they're hoping, to get is that their lives are bettered. And if whatever system of government they decide to adopt at the end of the day, will be up to them. If the outcomes are pleasing to the citizens, you cannot cry louder than the bereaved. But some of the consequences of that strained relationship between not just Nigeria, but ECOWAS and Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea and Mali, were captured in some of the reports, because sometimes the sanctions do not directly affect government officials. They usually hit the citizens first, especially those living in border communities. And we had gone out at some point to bring you that report, which we will now be playing about now.
Not exactly having things easy, given the closed border situation, which has resulted in low economic activities. The Controller General of the Nigeria Customs Service, Bashir Adewale, visited the Congoland border in Mayadua local government area of Katsina State for an interactive session with the residents. Comprising mostly traders, traditional and religious leaders, including community and opinion leaders, the residents appealed to the federal government to, as a matter of urgency, reopen the land borders.
Mayadua is a place where there is peace, but now, sir, there is no peace because people are suffering from hunger because of closing the border. If you want to their homes, there is no food.
Mr. Adeniyi reiterated the federal government's commitment to removing all obstacles against free trade in the country, including the reduction of the number of checkpoints along major roads leading to the various land borders. He announced that President Tinubu had directed that all exporting items that had been seized by the customs should be returned to the owners on the condition that they would be sold in the Nigerian markets.
We are grateful to God that, we are gradually getting there. So part of what the president has done is to give us the directive that the food items that were seized in various customs operations targeted at export of food be released back into the Nigerian market.
Earlier in his remarks, the chief host and the Katsina State Command's Customs Area Controller, Mohammed Umar, commended the Customs Controller and his team for the visit.
We, Katsina State Area Command, are strategically placed to uphold the core objective of the Nigerian Customs Service, which are implementation of government fiscal policies, suppression of smuggling, erecting an enabling environment to facilitate trade, collection of revenue, and accounting for the same side.
The Controller General of Customs also paid a courtesy visit to the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, in his residence at Daura, Katsina State, where he thanked him for his contribution to the service while in office as president.
Well, yes, we now have ACG Segun Adegoke, retired. He's an assistant controller, he's a retired assistant controller general of Immigration and is a special advisor, Migration and Homeland Security to the governor of Oyo State. Well, thank you so much for your patience, Mr. Adegoke, and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, Mokwe. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, yes, last week we heard that, we learned the federal government issued a statement lifting all sanctions that ECOWAS had imposed on Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and also Guinea. Nigeria fulfilled its own part of the obligation of the agreement just last week. How has it been around the border between, the border in Oyo State between Niger and Nigeria?
First, let me start by saying that the decision of the ECOWAS head of government to lift the sanction is a welcome development. And when you bring it at home to Nigerian border, you must be aware that there has been many years of communal, traditional, cultural relationship between the people of Niger and Nigeria. You have a former head of state saying that part of him is from Niger. As for the border, immediately after the lifting of the air and land border restriction by the federal government, the Immigration and Customs Services lifted the so-called gate. And then you have to know that these are more of a symbolic, in the sense that even before the lifting of the ban, there has been human movement at this same border. So what this has just done is that to heighten and ensure movement of goods and people along our border between Niger and Nigeria. All along, it was the banning. For me, it was symbolic, in the sense that people still move about by walking through the border, because when you come to the border, sometimes you cannot even see the division. The line is so thin. You just see a gate, maybe with some what's it called, iron steel gate, and being open and closed. But for people's movement, that has been known before, during, and after the ban. So as for Benin border, the same applies. Every goods movement was restricted, but human movement was taking place, as well, of course, with the usual regular control by the immigration services and the custom service.
Well, Oyo State recently was in the news as a result of something sinister which had happened, the explosion which had taken place in Ibadan, especially in the heart of Ibadan. And we understand that investigations is still going. But preliminary investigations had revealed that some of the people who housed those explosives were people who were from other countries within the ECOWAS sub-region. And there had been questions around that. So when you say that, people to people movement had been on between, the border communities. It was the goods that were affected. Now that goods can now come in alongside people, are there concerns that you have, given some of the security, threats that we have seen as a result of, checks that had not been done properly before now?
First, let me comment about the unfortunate explosive incident at Old Bodija Estate, Ibadan. It's unfortunate because these explosives were stored in a residential area with people, neighbors, who could see movement. But you have to give it to His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Oyo State, for his leadership role in taking care of the situation. Apart from physically visiting the scene, on the night of incident, he was there. We were all there with all the security agencies, heads of security agencies. He applied both the kinetic and the non-kinetic measure that people are talking about now. He first of all settled the people, the residents, who became homeless. They were put in top-notch hotels, not your anyhow hotel, because these are sophisticated, educated, highly educated individuals. He sorted them out, and then the whole place was cordoned off to ensure that nothing and nobody tampers with the investigation processes. He set up emergency center, both for medical and for welfare of the human residents of Bodija, Old Bodija, the victims, so to speak. And
Mr. Adegoke, because we're pressed for time, what I would really like you to focus on is how, we're keeping an eye on the border and movements to ensure that, people who are coming in with spurious goods, especially like the type that was kept in the Old Bodija estate, are prevented from coming in or have sufficient clearance, knowing what it is that they're bringing in and where these things are going to. Because at the end of the day, it is states that are impacted. So do you think that the security agencies or the border agencies are sufficiently aware of some of the things that need to be coming in or do not need to be coming in as a result of some of the things that we have experienced in Nigeria?
I was only laying the foundation to show you what the Excellency has done. We're almost out of
time. That's why I had to, to hurry.
Okay, let me just say this, that to prevent future occurrence in our state, the Excellency has signed into law an executive order. Hello?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
An executive order to prevent handling of dangerous don't forget explosives is under the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government. But handling of dangerous, harmful substances comes under the executive order to prevent future occurrences. Now, about if these goods are passed through the border, you have to understand that today, west of technology, human person is inadequate to man our border. So it behoves on the Nigerian Immigration Service, the custom, because immigration deals with movement of people, custom will deal with goods. The element, the substance you are talking about is goods. So my advice to the custom authority, the management and the immigration management is to now adopt technology in their control and management of our borders. Through satellite surveillance, you can scan goods now without physical checking.
What?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, what role do you see for states? For instance, you are advising the state government. The borders are usually present in states. What role do you think states have in this vigilance process, given that a lot of the agencies are federal government agencies?
Yeah, thank you. The management control of border is within the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government. So what the state can do is what His Excellency has done now by setting up Office of Migration, Special Advisor, Migration and Homeland Security to safeguard the state and manage the flow of people and goods into and out of your state. So how do we go about it? It takes the people, we are doing a lot of massive enlightenment to tell the people, when you see something, say something, and it's sorted. The state government will take care of it. If the neighbors of this miner had informed the government on time when they saw the movement of these goods into the storage of the goods into the house, maybe we would have prevented what happened at Bodija. So that's where the government comes in the Office of Migration and Homeland Security network, partner with all the security agencies in your state. So when we get information, we inform them, and you can be sure it is sorted. A few weeks ago, His Excellency was himself involved on a Saturday to ensure the closure of an illegal mining site in Ibadan. You must have read about that. We got information, and he acted. He led the visit to the site. Today, the place is sealed up, and investigation is ongoing. That is where partnership between the people, the grassroots, and the security agencies and the state government. And the government will not sit on it, it acted immediately. So we can only act within us. We cannot control what comes in. That is the job of immigration and customs.
Okay, Mr. Adegoke, talking about what the collaboration between the people and the government and what happens around the borders. You are in Oyo State. So let's look at the border communities in Oyo State. What's going on there now in terms of development to ensure that the people are happy and willing and ready to ensure that their borders are protected?
Oh, thank you. Fortunately, a few days ago, the Nigerian Boundary Commission hosted a meeting of border community between Oyo State and Benin, and it involved stakeholders from different states, as far as Kwara, Kebbi, Taraba, and then the border community. From the discussion at that workshop, we've been able to, for that I can confirm to you, it's peaceful. And all the issues highlighted at the meeting are being taken care of by His Excellency. The chairman fortunately, the chairman of the meeting is the Deputy Governor of Oyo State. And it involved the Deputy Governor of Ogun State, some deputy governor from Kwara, Lagos. They were all at this meeting. So 2 weeks ago, that's to tell you we are on top of it. It's peaceful as I speak.
Well, we certainly will keep tabs with you, Mr. Adegoke. We have to thank you so much for your time this morning on Sunrise Daily. We hope that there will be no incidents and that no more relations between the people at the border, people of the border who live in both Nigeria and Niger in different parts of Nigeria will resume as normal to the benefit of everyone. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with the Assistant Controller, a retired Assistant Controller Controller General of Immigration, Mr. Segun Adegoke, who is a Special Advisor, Migration and Homeland Security to the Governor of Oyo State. Well, that's where we wrap up the program today, this beautiful Wednesday morning. It's been quite a morning. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. We hope that you'll do so tomorrow again. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
I'm Neo Taibo. I want to thank you for all the comments and messages that have come in. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to take them, but we will do that tomorrow. Thank you. Do have yourself a beautiful rest of the day.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Do have a wonderful and beautiful day ahead.